Well, I'm here on the Sunshine Coast, not far from Noosa, and I'm deep in koala country. I'm about to meet some incredible dogs that do amazing work for koala rehabilitation. I'm Sarah Jones. Welcome to Dog Jobs Australia. Not too far from the picturesque coastline of the Sunshine Coast is one of the key habitats of an iconic Australian animal. A 30-minute drive from the popular tourist town of Noosa, you'll find plenty of native bushland that the humble koala calls home. But like many native animals, they're under threat, and that's where Maya comes in. Along with her trusted companion Romane, she tracks the local koala population as part of a program that hopes to help save them. So, Romane, we're here with Maya, who is the dog that started it all.
Yes, Maya is, we call her the old queen of the pack. She's been with me from the very start in 2011, when it was just pretty much me with a crazy idea and her delivering the crazy idea.
And it's been going strong ever since, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So you don't know exactly how old Maya is that right?
Yeah, so she's a rescue dog, so she was left at the pound without a name or an address. So we don't really know how old she was, but she was an adult dog, and we got her as part of the team in 2011.
And when you were looking for a dog that could find koalas, were there particular qualities that you were looking for?
Yeah, so our dogs are all selected for the same kind of craziness. We call it OCD for ball or for playing, basically.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we want a dog that just, all day long and all night long, if you listen to them, will play with you. And we kind of harness that energy and that motivation to find a target holder.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes that would put people off a dog. They would think like, oh, that's going to be way too much work for me. But when they're a working dog, that's the very thing that
we're
you're
looking
wanting.
for. And you're very right, it's often too much. And that's why they end up at the pound in the first time. Because you can't just leave them home and go to work. Like, they need constant attention, constant entertainment. And they really want a human to be constantly playing with them. They're not going to let you rest on the couch. And we always say, people ask us, oh, so how many days a week would they want to work? And it's like every day of the week. They hate the weekend. They really do not like any time that is not spent running around in the bush.
Well, I noticed even when we were getting our cameras ready, while we're all chatting away, she was out finding a koala scat. So
she's always
never,
on the
job. Never taking a break. She's looking out right now, just observing everything. Maya's not the only employee working around these parts. She's joined by Bear, who's become quite the international celebrity.
Bear is an interesting complement to Maya. So we've got our main dogs are really important to us because they help us map koala habitat. So they focus on the scats, the job that I was doing, very poorly a decade ago. And so they do that very efficiently. So we know where koala live, and it's really important to protect their habitat. But there are times where you actually want to find a koala, and it was in particular during the wildfire that we had last year. Like when an animal is injured or sick, or you're kind of worried for their safety because there's been a great big fire, mapping their habitat is not enough. And so this is where the idea of having Bear came from. It's like, okay, can we get someone, again, relying on their nose to help us find koala? Bear's got the hardest job of all of our dogs because koala can be very high in trees, and the scent goes all around, and it's much easier for a dog to find the scats and say, yeah, it's here, than for a dog to say, yeah, somewhere here, I can smell a koala, and then us human have to find it. And
maybe you might miss it, and he might
absolutely
be thinking
80%.
It's right there.
I know, and so that's very frustrating for poor Bear because as we discussed, like 80% of the time you can miss koala.
We're a lot less sophisticated.
So it can be there, and Bear is like, yeah, I can smell it, it's here, and if you can't find it, then you can't play.
reward him.
Yeah, and so that's the tricky part. But we always go around with koala fur, and that's one of the scent he's trained on.
So that's what he was trained. Yeah, the scent that he was trained on.
And we had a little pad that we rub koala
because koalas have that. Male koalas have a scent that they mark. So he's picking up on that, is he?
Absolutely. Yeah. So all that create a picture in his mind of what the target scent is.
Yeah.
And so when we can't find a koala in the tree, then we put a little bit of fur, and he can indicate on that and still get to play.
And still get a reward. Oh, that's nice at least. I wanted to learn a little bit more about how Bear found his way to searching for koalas. So I caught up with Josey, a wildlife campaigner for the International Fund for Animal Welfare, otherwise known as IFAW. So Josey, how did you get involved in the detection dog program?
So I met Romane from the Detection Dogs for Conservation program about 8 years ago now, and she came to this crazy idea to train a dog to detect live koalas. It's kind of not really been done before. A lot of dogs have been trained to detect koala scat, poo, fresh and old, but not actually live koalas. So she asked us and IFAW if we'd like to be involved, and we were absolutely yes. I thought it was an amazing idea. Because it's so important to detect live koalas, particularly in rescue situations, particularly bushfires, when we need to actually find those survivors and actually rescue them and take them into rehabilitation. So we were in and we sponsored the training and the search for a rescue dog, and along came Bear, and we knew within an hour that he was the one. He just had a natural aptitude. He was born for this, basically.
Yeah. So you mentioned IFAW.
Yes, that's the International Fund for Animal Welfare. So we're a global animal charity looking after the welfare of individual animals and the wider conservation efforts and protection of habitat.
So very much not just koalas then?
No, not just koalas. I mean, koalas in Australia are a flagship species. And by protecting them and saving them, we're saving countless other species. So, so that's kind of like the poster child for conservation, really. But they've been through a lot recently. They've been through a lot historically. They've lived through Ice Age. They've lived through the fur trade that almost drove them to extinction. And now along came habitat loss and development, and that's the major threat to koalas now. And then, of course, we had the Black Summer bushfires, which struck at the heart of a lot of koala populations around the country. So they really are living on a knife edge. So anything we can do to find and protect those individuals, every individual matters for conservation. But as you know, they're quite difficult to find. They're these tiny little balls of fur, camouflaged high up in the tree, and dogs like Bear can smell what we can't see. It's really great teamwork, and we couldn't do it without everyone else as part of that team.
Yeah, you've got a big team of the dog handlers, the researchers, people volunteering their land. It's a real collaborative effort.
Collaborative effort.
Collaborative effort, that's great.
Did you get that? No.
And how do these dogs come into detection dog work?
Well, the beautiful thing about the Detection Dogs for Conservation, something that really attracted us as an animal welfare organisation, is that they recruit all their dogs. They're rescue dogs, basically. So they're wonderful. Dogs that don't necessarily make a good family pet. They're high energy and obsessive, but those very qualities make them an ideal detection dog. So Bear is a perfect example. He didn't make the best family pet, but he makes an awesome detection dog.
Well, I've been looking out in the trees and I haven't spotted any koalas, but I do know that they're very hard to spot. So maybe we should get the team in.
Let's get some reinforcements.
It's a beautiful day on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and I've only just begun to get to know about all the efforts underway to help protect local koala habitat. We're hoping to spot a koala, and I've been told Bear is the best boy for the task. So we've found koala scat, so we do know that there's koalas around somewhere, so it's time to bring Bear in.
Exactly, so it's kind of a teamwork. We deploy the habitat detection dog first. We know we're in koala habitat, so now let's try to find a koala.
Okay, let's see. Right, we found something.
That's it, that's his indication.
And you can
see his bum just
like
to the top of
there's a
that
little
tree.
white on him because of the sunlight.
It didn't take long for Bear to find a koala, and after I spent a short while trying to see what he and everyone else was looking at, I spotted it too. A tiny, furry, grey bump lost in a sea of green. It's easy to see why Bear's work is so important. So this is a really good sign that we've found an actual koala here?
Absolutely, we are stoked because, you know, it's not every day that we see the koalas.
Yeah.
They're not that many around anymore, so super cool. Koala are very hard to find.
Yeah.
They're cryptic, what we call, so they're very good at hiding. Even though they're a big animal in a tree, you would think, oh yeah, easy to spot, but not at all. They don't make a sound.
Yep.
They, camouflage in the foliage, and
they want to be right at the top quite often.
They're
so
often at the top. They often, put the tree trunk between you and them so that you can really not see them. And basically, when we looked at how good humans are at finding koala by eyesight, we noticed that they were really bad. So they can miss up to 80% of the koala that are present in an area just by looking for them. So obviously,
that makes your research really hard if you're going through trying to find out if koalas have come back, but you can't even see them.
You can't even see them. And that also makes your research very inaccurate.
Yes.
Because if you miss them more often than you found them when they're there, then you can't really trust your results. So a lot of the time, ecologists actually look for scats. A bit less glamorous, but koala poop a lot, about like 80, 100 pellets each day.
Wow.
So there's a lot of them to be found, and they stay in the environment for a while. So your chance of finding a koala compared to finding a scat is very different.
Right.
So I very rapidly opted for looking for scats.
Yeah.
So that was more efficient, but still, like, we can imagine you spending your time in the bush like this. Koala scats are very small and brown, very easily obscured. And it's also quite boring.
Yeah. There's better things you could be doing with your time.
Yeah, you kind of, but it gives you a lot of time to think. So I had months in the bush looking, through the litter for those little pellets. And that's where, the brain goes and it's like, surely there's an easier way. And those pellets, because koala rely on eucalyptus, they're very strongly eucalyptus scents.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you actually can smell them. Like, it's really powerful. So instead of looking with your eyes, you could smell with your nose. And obviously, we are not very good at sniffing.
But dogs certainly are.
And we're very good at working with dogs, so it's a very great team.
Speaking of great teams, Romane thought it might be a good opportunity to take Maya for a walk. So off we go. Is this area an area that she's been to before?
No, so we've never been here, but we've talked with colleagues at Queensland Koala Crusaders, and they're really keen to know whether there's koala here in case they can use this property to release rehabilitated koala.
Oh, wonderful.
So we're kind of trying to see whether it's good koala habitat. So if Maya found cats, then we know koala call it koala habitat, right? So that's really good to release the koala in a place where they could find tree and food tree and maybe as well some colleagues.
Is there an issue about territory and territorial behaviours and that sort of thing?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to have too many koala released in one spot in case there's any competition. You have something, Maya.
So she found something.
Yeah, you can see the tail going.
The tail's
and now
wagging.
She drops. Good girl. You've got something, Maya girl. Oh, show me again. Show me. Yes, good girl.
She's really good at pointing it out, isn't she?
Yes.
She lets you know.
We train her to do that because sometimes she can smell it, but I still can't see it. And she pointed it at me, and I just moved it. There you go. So this is fresher than what we found before.
Yeah.
And so very entertaining, but we do smell the scats to see how fresh it is.
Yeah.
It's not very smelly. So it's not super fresh, but it's much fresher than the one we found before. You can see it's still covered a little bit in patina. It's not sun
They're very
bleach or
dry,
anything.
aren't they?
Yeah, very dry. They reabsorb a lot of the water, the koala, because You know, their food, they get most of their water from the leaf and from leaking when it rains, the trunk. So it's not a huge quantity of water, so they reabsorb a lot of it.
Oh, it's a tough life, sounds like.
Yeah, we often say they're living on the edge, like they've got one of the poorest diets you can imagine. And it's not just poor in terms of nutrient, but it's also a lot of toxin. So not only they don't get a lot of energy, but then they have to
expend that energy.
Exactly, into detoxification. So the poor koala doesn't have a lot of room to play with, and I think that's why sometimes they're a bit vulnerable. Because, you know, they kind of can't go very long, like there's no buffer for them. They need to find the tree and eat every day, really, to keep enough energy coming in.
Yeah, and they need to eat quite a lot of leaves.
So they're full. They're full of leaf. Like the intestine of the koala is so much longer than the human. Just a lot of it goes into digestion, and it's very interesting. But they've got a very strong, microbiome with a lot of bacteria that helps them, getting the nutrient out and breaking down the toxin. So it's a whole ecosystem, the koala, really.
Amazing. To find out more about the work Romane and the team do, go to usc.edu.au/research. More Dog Jobs Australia after the break.
Whilst filming Dog Jobs Australia on the Sunshine Coast in Noosa, our crew chose to stay and unwind at Balakaza Resort, centrally located in and around Australia's favourite beach holiday destination. With spectacular shores, breathtaking national parks, a cosmopolitan cafe culture and temperate year-round climate, the Noosa region certainly boasts plenty of holiday appeal. To book your stay at Balakaza Noosa, visit balakaza.com.au.
I'm taking a brisk walk with my new friend Maya and her handler Romane. Romane's explaining to me the importance of being able to track koala populations in the area.
It's very difficult translocation of koala, so you have to have as much information as you can, in terms of, is it good koala habitat? So that's what we're gathering today with Maya. How many koala are around? Obviously you don't want too many koala because you don't want them to have to fight for territory. And one of the things that would be really interesting is as well to know the disease status of those koala.
Sure.
Because you don't want to release a koala in a place where there's a lot of disease. You kind of want to give them the best chance.
And do some of your teams collect scat to look at the health of the koalas? Is that something you can do?
Absolutely. So we were talking about what does the team do. So we do a lot of habitat mapping with the detection dog that are trained on every scats possible. Fresh one, but old one, like sometimes weeks, months, even years. But then we have a specific dog that is trained to only indicate on super fresh poo. That's only a few days old. The reason we have her, we call her our genetic detection dog. And basically those cats, super fresh, we bring back to the lab. And we've got members of our team that are specialized in studying the genetics of the koala. Some are specialized in studying disease, especially chlamydia. But we have collaborators that provide us information on retrovirus. And then we also do hormone, so stress in particular.
Right, yeah.
And then we can also do microbiome, so that gut ecosystem I was talking about. So basically from that one little poo, you can then open so many doors into knowing koala. That come, like if you were just seeing the koala, you couldn't get all that information, but from the poo, you can, and so that's very precious.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's also a non-invasive way to study koala.
Of course.
So you don't have to catch them to know who they are, genetic fingerprinting, the genetic diversity in breeding, relatedness, so where's their mom and dad, their disease status, whether they've got a healthy microbiome, in their gut, whether they are stressed, whether they are breeding. There's so much contained in that little pellet. It's it's so rich in information for us.
A conservation effort like the one being undertaken on the Sunshine Coast requires a lot of collaboration. Along with the USC detection dogs and IFAW, I caught up with Queensland Koala Crusaders ambassador Meghan Halverson. So Meghan, tell me a little about how you got involved with the detection dogs.
Well, originally I came over from America and volunteered at the Wildlife Hospital at Australia Zoo. And with 6 other women, we decided that koalas really had an issue, and we were seeing them come into hospital too many times, sometimes multiple admissions.
The same koala?
Same koala, hit by a car or attacked by a dog in someone's backyard. So the urban and peri-urban koalas were really in trouble. And unfortunately, where the best koala habitat is where we want to live as humans as well. So we founded an organization called Queensland Koala Crusaders and decided we really wanted to be a voice for koalas.
The Koala Crusaders were formed in 2012 and have spent almost a decade working towards improving koala conservation efforts in Queensland.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems we have in koala conservation is we don't know exactly where they are and how many there are. So I'm often asked, how many koalas are left in the Noosa region? And I'm like, I can't answer that because full surveys have not been done. But the work of the detection dogs is starting to give us a better picture of their genetics, of how close they are to the peri-urban and urban environment, as well as the hinterland. And so with that, we're getting a better picture, a better survey, and the more surveys we do, on private properties especially, if you have a property you think might have koalas, it's really good to get the detection dogs out because they're really good at finding koalas.
And even if there's not a koala on that property, that land could potentially be rejuvenated?
Yes. We can also find koala scat, so you might not find a koala on the property at that time, but if they find koala scat, they can look at the genetics, they can look at the health of the koala as well through that poo, and they also then tell us that yes, koalas have moved through here, and it's a potential site where maybe it's a big field that needs more trees, we can plant trees. Yeah.
And your group is involved with even that sort of stuff, the planting of trees?
Yeah, so one of
really
the
grassroots.
Yes,
literally.
exactly. Yeah. So one of the things we did a couple of years back is we got a grant through the Body Shop in the UK.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we were able to access the funding to plant seed funding for an area that we knew needed to be rehabilitated that was bought through state government, Noosa Council, and Noosa Parks Association to develop into a national park. So Ringtail Ural is the name of the project, and we gave them the seed funding to start that planting so that now those trees, as pine plantation is taken out, they're reestablishing a regional ecosystem that will be really good for koalas and many other species, glossy black cockatoos, etc. It's incredibly rewarding because a lot of the work we do is really depressing. You know, picking up dead koalas off the road, picking up really sick and injured koalas can really have its toll. And it has its toll on rescuers as well as carers, as well as advocates that care so much about the species and feel like we're going a bit backwards with the amount of habitat loss and fragmentation that occurs in Queensland, but also all throughout Australia, New South Wales, other Victoria, everywhere. Yeah.
Well, it's pretty magical to be on a place like this. It's someone's private property, but it just feels like an entire forest.
Yeah. Oh, if we can find koalas here, it's going to give David a really big boost today, knowing that the property that he's purchased specifically for conservation and for his family to see that out. It's a dream come true.
Obviously, our goal is to help the survival of the koala, and because there's so many threats, then we kind of go in all directions.
Yeah, you can't just have one blanket approach. You've got to
you
do
have
all this
to,
research
exactly. You know, this is why it's so hard to protect the koala, because you can't do one thing and it will work everywhere. You actually have to get in and say, okay, how is that population going? And if they're not going well, which is often the case here in Queensland, you have to ask the question why, because a population might be struggling, because of development or lack of habitat, but a population might be struggling for disease, and another one because of dog and car issues.
Yeah, so each population needs to be studied really, to find out exactly what the problems are, and then and tailor a solution.
Absolutely. So you can't just have a blanket rule of this is what we're going to do and the koala will be fine. You actually need to understand each population and then do the right thing for that population. Yeah. And you can imagine that this takes a lot of manpower and woman power. And dog power.
Dog power. Well, we've come to the end of a beautiful day here on the Sunshine Coast, but our travels haven't finished yet. There's still a lot more Dog Jobs Australia to come. Catch you next time.